Being right, my wife and I have been married 10 years and have 2 young kids, 8 and 5. This summer, she had some extra vacation time and started hanging out with a neighbor's stay-at-home wife. Laying by pool. Etc. The neighbor's wife, Susan, is in an unhappy marriage. About 10 years older than my wife and drinks all day, does all she can to avoid her husband. My wife is very conservative, drinks very little and was basically very opposite of Susan. Pretty soon, my wife was acting like Susan, drinking all the time, avoiding being home with me and the kids. They would walk around the neighborhood and end up getting home at 2 or 3 in the morning. When I first approached the subject of her change in behavior, it would end up with, "I'm just having fun. I'm not doing anything wrong. What have I done in 10 years of marriage to make you question anything I do? All I was asking for was some courtesy. Text, call and let me know where you are or when you will be home when it gets past a decent hour." She began to act much more distant to me, and when we would go to social outings, down at Susan's house most of the time, she would come to life, laughing, having a good time, but would ignore me, and when home alone with me would be a zombie. Any attempts by me to talk about things would end up with her not wanting to talk or her thinking nothing is wrong. Our relationship, emotionally and physically, just withered. Finally, out of desperation, I approached Susan and asked her what was wrong. I knew they talked and texted all the time. Susan actually confided in me and said that she was going through a rough patch, both with life and with some things in our marriage. As far as us, some of it was physically, which confused me because I've always wanted more, but my wife was always the conservative and would shut down anything new or different. Very vanilla love life. Susan had been trying to get her to open up more. Susan is very frank when it comes to physical things. And for most of the summer, my wife had been doing new things via Susan's suggestions: shaved, fancy pajamas, watching videos. This confused me even more as none of this had affected our physical life in 3 months. Susan was confiding all the things my wife was saying to her, to which I'm sure my wife would not want her sharing with me. But I thought maybe I could learn something about why my wife's behavior had changed so much toward me. I tried several times to visit with my wife about the radical change: drinking all the time, staying out late, indifference towards me. But she would shut down or just get tired of me bringing up issues all the time. It became counterproductive to say anything, and most times made the situation worse. Miserable summer. Fast forward to last Friday. We were invited to a pool party with other couples down to Susan's house. I had football practice with my son and didn't get there till 8:30, but by then, my wife was already blitzed. But at some point, she came up to me in the pool and hugged on me and was affectionate towards me, which was the first time in a while. I thought this might finally be a back to normal evening. Late in the evening, I went in to get a drink and ended up briefly alone with Susan. She was beaming and told me that earlier in the evening, while in the pool, my wife had fondled her. It was like a teacher proud that her student had finally opened up some more physically. It made me recall something Susan had told me earlier in the summer when trying to boost my wife's low self-image. She's beautiful but doesn't see herself that way. Susan told me that she told my wife, "You're beautiful. I do you. And because I know a woman's body, I could make you orgasm quick." I've heard Susan say things like this aloud, and they are always in a joking manner, but part of you always thinks there might be a hint of truth in there. I honestly believe because Susan is in a poor marriage and doesn't get any bonding, she tells everyone that she just might want to have some with my wife. She is aggressive, she's flirted with me before, and I'm afraid, like a shark, she may smell blood in the water. Sure, I'd like my wife to be more open in the bedroom, but not like that. Kills most marriages to have a third party involved. I waited until Sunday to visit with my wife about all this. She at first acted disgusted. Remember, she has always been extremely conservative. Then said she was drunk and didn't remember and couldn't image doing something like that, but the whole way she defended herself just led me to believe that it probably did happen. She finally just shut down and didn't want to talk about it anymore. I suggest a marriage counselor for all of our issues, but she wasn't interested. Finally, since she wouldn't talk, go see a counselor or seem interested in changing behaviors that affect our marriage. I looked at her and said, "Well, then I'm out of here." I meant, I was going to leave for a couple of days and see if my absence would open her eyes or make her want to talk about things, but she interpreted it as I was leaving the relationship. Apparently, it shook her up and she started apologizing for her behavior. Never said specifically what. Said she would not talk about our love life to Susan and agreed to ease up on the amount of time spent with her. She said she would be more affectionate and would work on our relationship and wanted things back to normal. She seemed to really mean it. So how have we done easing Susan out of our life? Monday got home from work and Susan and her kids were at my house with my wife and our kids. Tuesday took my son to football practice. Got home early and my wife and daughter were down at a neighbor's house with Susan. Wednesday Susan had texted the neighbors' wives, including mine, and said she was cooking for everyone and for them to all come over. We have to or it would be rude. Last night, I told my wife that maybe we ought to have a family night and just one evening without Susan. She agreed, but to me, it seemed like she would rather hang out with her. To my wife's credit, she has been trying to be more affectionate towards me and tell me that she loves me more often. She is not normally affectionate and comes across as non-emotional most of the time, but it has a feel to it that seems as if she is just building credit so she will be able to hang out some with the neighborhood wives, including Susan. Kind of I want to have my cake and eat it too type of situation. She also has a Labor Day beach weekend planned with her cousin and Susan, which now makes me nervous. I just don't understand how my conservative wife changed so much and so quickly. She tells me she loves me and I believe she does, in some ways, but she doesn't completely act that way. Not sure what I can do now other than wait and see, but I hate that feeling. Update. My wife has really done a wonderful job of changing her behavior. She has drastically reduced contact with Susan and Susan is no longer going on the beach trip. She's focusing a lot of attention on our marriage and we seem to be doing much better. I've been pretty firm with her on issues and it really seems to have made a difference. Hopefully things will continue to progress in this manner. Where do I start? I have been dealing with so much in the past few weeks. First, let me say that Susan is out of the picture. There were 3 different couples in the neighborhood that all agreed we needed to avoid this toxic couple. Contact has come to a stop. Now the next one. Found out that my wife has been having an emotional affair with the husband of one of the other couples. Earlier in the summer, I had discovered a text from her to him during one of her drunken spells saying, "Missed you tonight. Hope you slept well." It was at 12:45 a.m. when she was out with Susan walking the neighborhood. When I found it, I confronted her with how inappropriate it was. She agreed and said that they were just friends, but she should not have sent it as it could be interpreted wrongly. I became suspicious and there were several instances at Susan's pool parties when their behavior made me vastly suspicious, but I never had evidence and was bashed constantly when I brought it up. How can you not trust me? Would I really throw away 10 years of marriage? Have I ever done anything to make you doubt me? We had a lot of ups and downs during the summer. Mostly down. The guy actually made attempts to befriend me and we ended up becoming running partners and started to build a good friendship. I was always jealous of little things in their interaction. A gut feeling, I guess. But anguished over it and tried to convince myself that I was just paranoid. The 3 couples that had separated from Susan even formed a pretty good bond and started hanging out together and going out to dinner, concerts, etc. But something kept bugging, so I finally was able to get the password to my wife's cell phone account. The number of texts and phone calls was amazing. Always deleted from my wife's phone, and his too. The Labor Day weekend beach trip that I was so worried about Susan going on was a joke. The moment she left, she was calling and texting other men. I had a 2-hour conversation at 11:30 at night the first night. She had called me at 8:30 telling me she was tired from the long trip and was going to bed. Guess not. They had several other calls the next day. The rough part of it is that they both made me feel like crap for accusing them of something going on. I actually was apologizing to them for it. She and I had a fight about it at one of the pool parties. The next day, he and I had already planned a golf outing with several guys. I spent the round basically apologizing to him for my accusation. He spent the round texting my wife. This Monday, I gathered all the logs together and started comparing dates, events, times, so I could get a good timeline together. Got all my ducks in a row about what had happened. Tuesday, I sat down with my wife and asked her to explain any improper behavior with other men. She waffled for a while. Then I pulled out the info and she basically caved. Then I left, walked down to his house and did the same to him. The OMW does know. During my confrontation with him on Tuesday night, I told him that I didn't know what I was going to do about telling his wife, but if I were him, I would man up and tell her before I did. I basically wanted to torture him with having to deal with it. It worked. He waited until the next day to tell his wife. He minimized it, of course, and said they were just friends, but it was inappropriate. OMW called our house and wanted to speak with my wife. OMW walked down, they live just around the corner, and met my wife outside of our house. Apparently, my wife just cried and apologized. OMW then asked to speak to me because neither her husband nor my wife had really explained the number of calls, texts. Once she got the full picture from me, along with my copy of the logs, did she really understand? I'm at a crossroads. Both claim it never got physical, but I have no real way of knowing. According to my wife, during July, it got flirty via text but never progressed beyond that. It turned into more of a confidant, friend during August and September, and by mid-September, things were going back to normal in both marriages, so contact between the two really dried up. OMW started contacting me to find out more information. Her husband is trying to minimize everything according to OMW and even got upset at her for texting me about what happened. My wife at first just told me they were friends, but I finally got it out of her that it got flirty and that they both agreed they should delete everything to avoid detection. OMW doesn't know this, but I don't know if I should let her know. I'm sure he hasn't admitted to this yet. OMW did apologize to me on Friday, but she has to cut all contact with us. Me and I certainly understand. My wife believes I have a file with all the texts between the two of them, but that I haven't looked at it yet because it would hurt me too much. She has an iPhone on the day I busted her. I told her I needed the phone and that I have some software that allows me to download all the deleted messages. I could only pull up the last 2 weeks of texts. If someone more tech-savvy than me has a way to get deleted messages from July, I would be willing to give it a try. I used that as leverage to force her to tell me everything up front before I have to look at all the texts. It got me the flirty info and their decision to conspire to delete the messages, but that was it. She is pretty firm that it did not go to Pa, and considering she believes I have evidence from her phone, I 99% believe that portion of her story. She wants to reconcile, but I am unsure of what I want now. I did manage to get us in to see a marriage counselor on Thursday, and it was a hurtful but had some positives. Just so I don't seem so high and mighty, I did have an emotional affair about 5 years ago with someone who lived 3,000 miles away via text. My wife found it and was hurt by it, but managed to find a way to forgive me. Because of that, I feel more inclined to give her a chance in this situation. However, hers was right around the corner, still is, and created so much more damage. Mine was a single woman and she lived thousands of miles away. Hers lives right around the corner, is married. OMW teaches our kids. Their kids and our kids like to play together. Doesn't make mine better, but does make hers much more complicated and painful. Crazy thing is that I still am in love with her. I'm pissed off and don't like her very much, but I know my heart and it still wants her. I've done a good job of not showing that during this week because I think she needs to feel like crap for what she has done, but there will always be a part of me that wants to console her because of the pain she is in. However, it is self-inflicted and she needs to feel it. It's not like me to be an ass, but I also know I didn't do this. Need to run, but wanted to finish the update. Still waiting on the final September phone logs to confirm her story that it dried up during that time. I do know they both knew I had the passcode and talked with each other about that. They had the opportunity to come clean and didn't. My wife didn't even when presented with evidence. I know OMW asked other man to leave, but don't know what will happen with that relationship. Can't be my concern at this point. FYI, someone mentioned Susan. My wife claims Susan didn't know about their texts and calls. Don't really want to bring Susan back into the fold as she is unreliable on information. She likes drama and this would give her plenty of drama, and don't really want her back in our lives. If she knows or doesn't know, I don't really care. Susan also made the claim that my wife fondled her, but my wife has denied that adamantly. And I must say, I don't see my wife having those tendencies. Of course, I didn't see her having a tendency to have an emotional affair with another man either. I don't know what I will do because this is all so fresh. I need time to process everything, but have enjoyed getting perspectives off this board throughout the summer. I also need an outlet to vent my conflicted feelings. Another update. I feel I don't know who I am married to anymore. I want to make this work but keep getting hit with issues. We have been going through MC and it seemed to be working. She seems to be making genuine efforts to make this work. All contact has been cut off from Susan and other man. Other man and OMW are moving and we plan to move to a new neighborhood in the spring. We seem to be slowly making our way back when I discovered something the other day. Back when this all came to a head, one of the things that came out was how Susan mentioned to me how my wife was watching videos and starting to explore things. My wife, after some evidence presented, admitted about the emotional affair with the other man but adamantly denied watching videos. I thought the video thing was a small issue really because the emotional affair in my mind was the major issue. She basically called Susan a liar and made a point to stand firm on that one issue. I didn't think much about it since I was concentrating on the emotional affair at the time. After D-Day, one of the things I did was listen to the advice on here and made steps to trust but verify. I put a keylogger on our laptop. Come to find out she is watching video. There are worse things in this world, but it is hard to imagine the wife I've known all these years went from a conservative, demure person to, in one season, someone who drank like a fish, had an emotional affair with other man, and now enjoys watching videos. It's just such a drastic change. I'm more upset about the lie than I am her watching videos. She made such a big deal of it and it makes me question everything else she has told me since D-Day, including her summer with Susan. I can hear it now. I'd love my wife to watch video, but the thing is, she would never talk about it or watch it with me. We have increased our physical life since everything came out, and I have asked her if there is anything she likes or would like that we aren't doing. A little bit came out, but not much. I've also requested some things and she's never tried any of it. Nothing crazy, I promise. So, it's frustrating. She obviously wants more but won't communicate it with me. Our big issue in MC has been communication and her lack of expressing herself. She has never truly opened up to me during our entire marriage. She says she realizes that now and has been working on trying to communicate better about real issues. But no luck so far on this issue. If I approach her with this, she'll also know I've been keeping tabs on her and that could affect our progress. But it already is slowing me down and affecting my rebuilding trust since she has lied about it. Is she lying because she is deeply repressed and embarrassed, or because she is just a liar? Maybe she is not the person I thought she was. Maybe she had just one crazy season in life. I just don't know what to do anymore. I'm leaning on just being honest and upfront with her and just seeing what happens. Months later, my wife and I went to counseling, and she has been doing the work to reconcile. Things have been much better, and she has shown true remorse for what she did. My wife also felt terrible for what she did to the OMW and wrote an apology letter to her. They had started to become good friends during the summer, which is part of the reason my wife and other man had stopped their inappropriate behavior a month before I discovered the evidence. Here's the problem, at least for me. The OMW has now forgiven my wife and her husband and has started initiating contact between our families. They live around the corner from us. She teaches our children at school and has children that like to play with my daughter. She is a sweet woman and I admire her ability to forgive, but I'm not there yet and don't ever see myself wanting to be friends again with other man. She will contact my wife to go to the movies or will arrange for the kids to play together. Her husband and my wife still have not had contact yet since D-Day, to my knowledge, but I feel these frequent meetings will eventually lead to some contact between the two. Part of the problem, I think, is that the OMW was totally clueless about everything throughout the summer while I suspected something and was lied to by both other man and my wife about something inappropriate going on. He and I became good friends and he would text my wife while we were out together or on the golf course together. OMW never had either of those experiences, so I guess that helped her in getting past everything. My wife beat herself up pretty badly about what she did, and having the OMW forgive her was a huge relief to her. I never set up no contact with OMW because I didn't think I would ever have to. Because of school, there really is no way to have no contact anyway because we have to deal with her a few times per week. I just don't know how to handle. My wife is aware and will try to minimize contact, but she also doesn't want to offend the person who just forgave her for doing something terrible. OMW just invited our daughter to a sleepover birthday party for one of her daughters with an invitation my daughter received at school. So now my daughter is all excited about going and I'm the bad guy if I say no. But it adds another possibility of contact. It's this kind of stuff that is making me upset yet also makes me feel like the bad guy when I did nothing wrong. Brief story, my wife had an IA last summer with a neighbor. I suspected but didn't have proof until I discovered the call and text log from her cell phone from her phone carrier website. The number of calls and texts were extreme and were deliberately deleted and hid. We have moved and she has been doing the steps to our things are at a pretty good place, although I do trigger sometimes. I still check the phone and text logs on the website just to verify and have not found any contact. I doubt she would use that method anyway since that's how I discovered and she knows I have access. However, I decided to go backwards and check what was happening before the EI. I never really looked in that direction just because I was so focused on the OM. I discovered an out-of-state number that called and texted a fair amount for half a year. Nowhere near what she and OM did, but enough to make me curious and, to be honest, suspicious. Her EI with OM started in July. The number is no longer in her cell. It looks like maybe someone she met at a work conference, as the time of the first text seemed to be right around when she went to a conference. However, the calls and texts seem to be on weekends when they would not be talking work. Any suggestions on the best way to approach my wife on this? Our has been going pretty well, so I hate to accuse or bring up something that may be nothing. But I do admit my trust level is low after having been lied to so often last summer. I don't have any hard proof as to the content of the text, and they weren't massive in comparison to the other man. I guess my fear is a pattern that I just didn't notice until other man. She did have the same phone. It has been backed up a few times since then. I'm not that computer savvy but have learned to back up the phone and be able to see texts from the last backup, but I don't know how to get texts from over a year ago. I would love to have all of that if possible, so if someone knows how to get those texts, please let me know. You may have to keep it simple since I'm no IT expert. I feel fairly confident that it did not go PIA with the neighbor. I don't think they ever exchanged, "I love you." I think they just sent extremely flirty messages and became each other's confidant. Would spend hours talking on the phone and texting, all hidden from me. I got lucky in stumbling upon one text early on, and I think that may have put them on edge about pushing it much further than infatuation. She has taken steps to help me heal, but this is new information and I don't really know what it is. I'd hate to disrupt our progress if this is nothing, but would also hate to know that my wife could do this more than once. I can't be 100% sure that it didn't go physical. The timing and evidence seem to indicate that it didn't. However, they could have, and I can't rule that out. I never got to see the texts and got most of my information by bluffing on the amount of info I did have and letting her confess. But it did come out and I had to press to get what information I got. Logic dictates that I didn't get everything. If there is a way to recover those texts, would love to get final clarification on what I'm dealing with. I'm at the house now, waiting on the internet guy to set us up. I had previously downloaded the iPhone extractor, but it seems I have to register it before I can see all the info. I want to wait until I have all the info before I say anything. My gut has always been pretty good at letting me know when there is trouble. She seems to be doing all the right things now. It's just so hard to trust again. I was never made aware of a friend she met at a conference. My gut tells me she met someone at the conference and flirted and liked it. Then she met OM and took it further, then got busted. Will she want the high of the dopamine again, or did discovery wake her from the fog? Knowing what she did with OM hurt. Knowing whether she has done it before will tell me a lot before I do anything more. Waited all day for the contractor and still was unable to get the internet set up at my house. We'll have to wait a few more days. The laptop has the extractor on it, but I don't have a way to register it until I get internet. May need to bring it to a Starbucks or someplace with free internet. My theory is that this has to be someone she met at a conference. The pattern shows it would not be work-related, as texts. Calls are on weekends or evenings. She has never mentioned meeting someone or befriending someone at a conference or from this state. The calls, texts stop about a month before other man. R seems to be going well, but I still struggle with trust. I verify now and everything seems okay. I guess my biggest issue is I don't feel I got everything on D-Day. She admits texts that were inappropriate but says nothing physical. I had no proof other than logic and phone, text records from the cell phone carrier. Never saw the actual texts. Now to learn that there possibly could have been someone else she was texting makes me pissed off. I could be off base, it could be a female and the phone were registered under her husband's name. But logic and my gut tell me differently. I've been keeping everything cool for a few weeks while trying to get internet up in the hopes I could recover texts that would tell me something. I'm not having much luck, so that leaves only my wife to tell me, and she was not really forthcoming on D-Day. There are many things that I handled poorly upon discovering everything and really wish I had found this site sooner. One of them was not really pressing for answers on D-Day. I let her get away with a bunch of I don't knows, but I wasn't in the best of mindsets at the time. Too many emotions to really think clearly. I've had a lot of time to think, research and learn from others here. I have realized that it is a possibility that it did get physical. My best friend, the only one I've really confided in about all this, has always stated that it was likely. I have also come to realize that I may never know. I do believe she feels remorse and not for just getting caught. Her current actions show that she loves me. We are at a better place now, but I just have this need to know why. Without really looking at that, then there's a possibility it could happen again. I will be fine. I am much more independent and have been getting to a good place mentally the last few days. I'm really hoping she will be willing to help me with this healing process now that the fog has lifted. If not, I will deal with that too. It's been exactly 1 year since discovery of my wife's emotional affair. It's been a long and bumpy road, but things are better. She's taken the proper steps to fix our marriage. I still have rough days and triggers, but each day I'm healed a little more. The toughest part is the trust, which is taking longer than I hoped to heal. But I'm realizing that most BS are probably in their own fog a little bit. We keep hoping that the WS will do everything we expect them to and that we will return automatically to the pre-affair trust level. It just doesn't work that way though. Even if they do everything a WS should do, that trust level doesn't come back quick. We now know what they are capable of. It can be built up, but it doesn't happen fast. I see why everyone says 2 to 5 years to repair from infidelity. Things have been going well in our R. It has been 2 years since my wife's emotional affair and she has shown real remorse. But there are times when this disaster still creeps up. For example, we were hanging out with some friends this weekend when a woman mentioned other man. She had hosted other man's daughter for a sleepover with her daughter and just went on and on about what a nice and sweet guy other man was. She then asked why we don't hang out with other man and OMW anymore, and didn't we used to be good friends. My wife answered that we had moved, other man used to be a neighbor, and their kids weren't our kids' ages, and then changed the subject. It just brings it up, and I still feel anger with both my wife because of the damage done to our relationship and anger toward other man. He was a close friend, and I really didn't like other people thinking he was a nice guy. I don't always feel this bitter, but I did this weekend. 2 years past wife's emotional affair. She has shown remorse and our relationship has improved, although it will never be at 100% again. She communicates all the time with her girl cousins and aunts on her iPhone via an app called GroupMe. On a recent trip, she told me she was downloading an app called Snapchat because all her family had it. I didn't think much of it till I saw somewhere that it could be used for texting. Of course, my mind starts to race. I went on a trip this weekend with my son while my daughter was staying behind with my wife. I then learned my mother-in-law came and got my daughter for the weekend, giving my wife a weekend by herself. Mind racing again. This morning, my wife hops in the shower and I look at her phone. I check the recently used apps and it looks like Snapchat was used recently, or at least open, but it doesn't look like any messages sent or received since July 28. I know messages can be deleted though. This is what cheating does. Leaves you paranoid and you don't know if this is nothing or if this is something. My comment: this story is a lesson for all of you who want to reconcile. Unlike other viewers, I have no problem with reconciliation, but remember one thing: you will spend the rest of your life watching over your partner. If that is something you can live with, go ahead and reconcile.